Hi, I'm Bobigan Carney Jr., candidate journalist and current GOP candidate for governor of Minnesota in this year's August 9th primary, open to all voters. As a journalist, I covered our governor's Tuesday, June 28th news conference on abortion. Here it is in full. I'll be issuing a statement soon on why and how Dr. Scott Jensen can and must be stopped from being on this year's November ballot as our Republican candidate for governor, due to what I call the overthrow of Roe v. Wade by the U.S. Supreme Court and for other reasons. Of course, I'll be asking for your vote. Here's the governor's news conference.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time this morning. Minnesotans in the country had 96 hours to start to make sense of the extreme radical position taken by 6 Supreme Court justices. I think there's confusion, there's fear, there's anger, but that's starting to manifest itself into what can we do? What can we do to ensure that women's health care is a priority? What can we do to ensure safe, accessible, legal, affordable abortions and health care? And I think the biggest thing that we would say is, first and foremost, Minnesota is surrounded by states that have already made the move or will make the move, making abortion illegal in all circumstances. And in Minnesota, we have made very clear, not on our watch. Biggest thing to I think keep in mind is reproductive rights are on the ballot in November. The stakes are clear, they could not be higher. Governor's office is now the last line of defense against an abortion ban in Minnesota. The difference between my position and my opponent's extremism could not be clearer. Be very clear, and I know our folks here at the media are very clear to fact check and get things right. Scott Jensen has pledged to ban abortion without exception for rape and incest. My pledge is never in Minnesota. Scott Jensen has his way. Minnesota would become one of the most anti-choice states in the nation. Abortion is legal in Minnesota, but that could change in November. We're already seeing what happens when the anti-choice governors take over a state. We now saw the ruling in North Dakota that their last clinic in Fargo will be forced to close on July 28th. The good news is Minnesota stands ready to help anyone. Minnesota stands ready to show the care, compassion, and the health care ability to be able to take care of each and every person who comes. So make no mistake about it. In November, you're going to get an opportunity to make a choice. If my opponent, Scott Jensen, is elected, those rights are gone. I want to lay out some ways to make people sure about what a governor can do or do to ban abortion. Scott Jensen has promised to sign an abortion ban into law with no exception for rape or incest. If you don't think that these anti-choice, anti-health care bills are real, Governor Dayton was forced to veto 8 of those in a time when Roe stood. So if you don't think it's coming, it absolutely is. Scott Jensen's pledged to appoint anti-choice judges to our state Supreme Court who would overturn Doe versus Gomez. I will never appoint an anti-choice judge at any level. And finally, an anti-choice governor like Scott Jensen could use the platform to advocate for and manipulate the additional constitutional amendment to ban abortion in all circumstances, including rape and incest. As long as I'm governor, that will not happen. And just to be clear, I do not use the term extreme position just lightly. The fact of the matter is 80% of Minnesotans disagree with a ban that does not exclude rape and incest. 66% of Republicans disagree with Scott Jensen's position that would harm women, put their lives at risk, and send Minnesota backwards. So I know that there are millions across this state who are watching this decision closely. If you're one of those people, if you're a father like I am of a 21-year-old daughter who wonders what's next, contraception, marriage equality, women's rights to work in the workplace, equal pay, all of the things. I saw an article in today's paper. It was 100 years ago this year that Minnesota elected the first women to the state legislature. Now we have a majority. Lieutenant Governor and I have appointed 60% of our judge appointments have been women. This move takes us back, and all of those rights are at risk. the hopes and dreams of an entire generation of young women like my daughter, who has less rights than her mother or even her grandmother are coming. The good news is we can do a lot about that. We've got about 4 months to mobilize folks, to get out, to cast that vote against these extreme positions, and to make sure that Minnesota continues to be a state that values women, that values healthcare, that values their safety, that values the science, and make sure that we don't go in the direction that we've seen some of these states or that our opponent wants to take us. I rest easy every night knowing that we've got a champion in Minnesota who has spent her entire life making sure that children and families are cared for, make sure her entire life has been fighting for equality and access to everything that should be available to every single person in Minnesota. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
Well, good morning. I'm Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. I am the mom of a 9-year-old little girl. A 9-year-old little girl who has fewer rights than I did and fewer rights than her grandmother did. I have said before that I enjoy running on a ticket with a governor who listens to women. That has never been more important than today, because now we are one election away from losing our reproductive rights. The Supreme Court's disastrous ruling leaves Minnesotans with a very clear choice. Scott Jensen and Matt Burke have promised to pass one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country. I cannot think of a policy that is more cruel than forcing a victim of rape or incest to carry their pregnancy to term. But that is exactly what Scott Jensen has promised to do. Minnesota is now a refuge for countless people who will need access to abortion throughout the upper Midwest, but will be unable to get one done in their home state. We cannot allow the Republican ticket to turn Minnesota from a safe harbor for abortion access to one of the most extreme anti-choice states in the entire country. We owe it to the women who came before us, we owe it to the people who came before us, who fought for this right to fight like hell and to do everything in our power to maintain the right to choose. And we know that it won't stop with abortion. Clarence Thomas made it very clear that marriage equality is next on the chopping block. Access to contraception is next on the chopping block. When I was working to defeat the ban on same-sex marriage in Minnesota, I was very pregnant with my daughter, Siobhan. And I remember at that same time, Matt Burke was leading the charge against marriage equality. After they have taken away abortion rights, why would these men who have gone after trans youth and blocked a ban on conversion therapy, why wouldn't they go after marriage next? So we cannot go backwards. This choice is very, very clear. And as long as we are in the governor's office, we won't. So with that, I want to invite one of our partners who has just been crystal clear in her commitment to ensuring that Minnesotans have access to abortion, and that is Maggie Meyer, Executive Director of Pro-Choice Minnesota.
Hi, my name is Maggie Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Executive Director of Pro-Choice Minnesota. I'm super excited to be here today and very, very grateful to Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for their protection of our rights, for their executive order that went off beyond any other executive order I have seen come from a governor of this state in protecting the rights of pregnant people to terminate their abortions, or terminate their pregnancies. Pro-Choice Minnesota, formerly NARAL Pro-Choice Minnesota, is one of the oldest advocacy and grassroots movement building organizations organizing around the right to choose and the right to an abortion in Minnesota. We've been doing this work since before Roe versus Wade was the rule of the land, and we will continue doing so now that it is no longer something we can depend on. We want to make it crystal clear. Abortion is legal in Minnesota. It will continue to stay legal, and we can thank the governor and lieutenant governor for that. But there is so much more work that we need to do. Abortion will remain legal here, but it will not in North Dakota, in South Dakota, in Wisconsin, likely in Michigan, Iowa, and Nebraska. We are the only state in the upper Midwest. That means that we will see a 400% increase in patients coming from out of state to the only 8 clinics that provide abortion care in this state. There's only one of those clinics that currently provides second trimester care. We will of course have 9 now that the Red River Women's Clinic is moving from Fargo to Moorhead, but that is simply not enough. Only 2 of those clinics serve Greater Minnesota, one in Rochester and one in Duluth. Immediate bans in effect as of today are in Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, South Dakota, Utah, and Ohio, excuse me. We know that there are 27 states that have pre-Roe bans that will go into effect, or trigger bans that have been passed since 1973 that will impact people's right to choose. All of those states will be looking to states like Minnesota to serve patients coming from across the country. The impacts of this decision will fall hardest on people who already face discriminatory obstacles in healthcare, particularly Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people with disabilities, people in rural areas, young people, undocumented people, and those living in poverty. We also know that because this decision is under the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court has made it clear that all of our most personal decisions, who we marry, when we have children, and how we build our families are at risk. Every single statewide Republican candidate is celebrating the decision, and they have each expressed support for ending the right of Minnesotans to choose. Scott Jensen has said if elected, he already plans to ban abortion. Scott Jensen also supports a Texas-style law that bans abortion as early as 6 weeks and allows strangers to collect a $10,000 bounty for reporting women who have abortions and will put women and doctors in jail. Matt Burke has also said that after the KKK, Planned Parenthood is the most racist organization in America, and that abortion is not going to heal a rape victim. It is dangerous to elect these people. Not only that, but they are willing to exploit people at their most vulnerable in seeking pregnancy care as political fodder. We are better than that as Minnesotans, and we must re-elect our governor and lieutenant governor. Thank you. And thank you to
Thanks, Maggie.
Oh, good. I'll take it easy, Tiffy. And with that, I'm going to bring up Jessica Ralph, who's the medical director at Whole Women's Health, a clinic that provides abortion care services.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Ralph. I'm an obstetrician, gynecologist, and an abortion provider. I take care of women and people with uteruses from adolescence through maturity, including pregnancy care. It's really a joy to care for someone throughout their life at important moments like cancer screening, the birth of their children, or menopause. And I came to be an obstetrician gynecologist that provides full spectrum health care, including abortion care, because of my strong desire to support the autonomy of pregnant individuals to make their own healthcare decisions and determine their own futures. Currently, our state, our governor and lieutenant governor support Minnesotans' autonomy, but a change in our elected officials, as everyone has said, could lead to restrictions on abortion, like a ban, potentially with only narrow exceptions, like threat to the life of the pregnant person. I wish to share with you how those exceptions provide a false sense of security, that people will get appropriate medical care when they need it. I've previously worked in healthcare facilities that privately, because of religious restrictions, adhere to such narrow healthcare practices. And when permissible abortion is defined so vaguely, health of the pregnant person or health of the mother, it's really impossible to apply in most situations to real patients. I once took care of a person that I'll call Ashley. Ashley's water broke in the very early second trimester, months before viability could be obtained by the fetus. In such cases, it's exceedingly rare that pregnancy will result in a living child, and almost assured that the pregnant person themselves will develop life-threatening infection if they remain pregnant. Discussion of abortion in these cases is necessary, and in Ashley's case, what she wanted to preserve her health. However, we as her doctors had to first have a discussion with the hospital committee about how sick Ashley might need to become before this condition was considered life-threatening and we could intervene with a life-saving abortion. Did Ashley need to develop signs or symptoms of infection first, or was just the threat of a severe infection enough? If she got sick with this infection, how sick did she need to be? In Ashley's case, she did have to become quite ill and hemorrhaged as a result of the infection that she developed before we could intervene. And though she ultimately survived, she could have avoided becoming so sick in the first place if we had been allowed to provide her with the abortion care she needed and requested. Pregnancy can be risky, and abortion is often a part of caring for pregnant people. Pregnant people deserve unbiased medical care, given with compassion, and not a one-size-fits-all abortion ban that does not accommodate the nuance of decisions about family and pregnancy. These decisions are best left to the pregnant person themselves. They don't need elected officials interfering with their human rights. So please consider this when you go to the ballot box this fall.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ralph, for everything that you do. So I'm now going to introduce someone who has really shown me and so many of us what a mother's love looks like in action. She is a force, she is powerful, and we are so grateful that she is willing to share her story with all of us today. Tibby Amundsen, please come on up.
We're supposed to make a card first. Just try to set those up there. Good morning. I think it's still morning. I wanted to share with you my journey to becoming a mother. It isn't like most, but it's important to hear. My husband and I both come from big families and want a good-sized family ourselves. 2016 was shaping up to be an amazing year for us. We bought our first home, I earned tenure in my kindergarten teaching position, and we got pregnant on the first try. We were so excited. Our families were so excited. Halfway through our pregnancy, we went to our 20-week ultrasound. We were thrilled to be finding out the gender of our baby. I had already bought decorations for a gender reveal party that we were planning for that evening. But then everything changed. The genetic counselor from maternal fetal medicine came in the room. She had a legal pad filled with fatal flaws that our baby had. She carefully began reading them and explaining them but I had to stop her. I couldn't let her reach the bottom. I couldn't even hear them all. The baby we had planned and prepared for had stopped developing. We would never bring him home to the nursery that we had already started to decorate. We had already picked out his name, and I had already felt him moving. The room spun, and I searched for anything to save me, but nothing did. I remember thinking that this couldn't be my story. This couldn't be my baby. But it was. Then she told me that my placenta was thickened and priming itself to take out my uterus. If we delayed, I would likely lose my uterus. It wasn't going to take my life at that point, but just the life I wanted, the life my husband and I had planned. The next few days were a dark blur, and even with the protections of Roe, our state constitution, Planned Parenthood was the only clinic that would provide us with an abortion. Although our baby's development had stalled several weeks before, he still had a heartbeat, and I was not sick enough for the hospital system we were in to take us. The hospitals wanted me to be a little closer to death before they intervened. Planned Parenthood treated us with compassion, and they did all they could legally do. They helped us take care of all of the details of our son's cremation. They gave us these tiny hand and footprints that we cherish. They're the only piece of our son that we will ever get to hold. Abortions are referred to as a choice, but I did not choose it. It was the only choice I had. And it is the only reason that I have children today. I am grateful to say my husband and I welcomed our rainbow baby into our family exactly 1 year to the day from our abortion, and he will turn 5 in August. We also have a spirited 2-year-old, and both of them give us more joy than we ever imagined. We're expecting our last little boy in September. Our abortion procedure saved my uterus, and I was able to grow our other 2 sons and this current one in it. My abortion gave me the chance to be a mother. My abortion gave me the joy I feel each day watching my children play. When you vote this fall, please think of me and my family when you fill in that circle. Without the protection of Roe, Governor Scott Jensen could have taken away my access to abortion. Scott Jensen's abortion ban would have left me without a uterus and without my children. If he is elected in November, women across Minnesota and our entire region will be at risk. If Scott Jensen gets his way, women who become pregnant after being sexually assaulted will be forced to carry their pregnancy to term. Women who need reproductive health care will have to fear a Texas-style, I was intending to say Texas-style, but there are so many more states now that have banned them entirely. Women who are experiencing the same tragedy that I did will have nowhere to turn. When or if to have children is such an intimate and important decision, and everyone deserves to make it on their own. Scott Jensen would be a disaster for women who need access to safe and legal abortion care. Without Roe v. Wade, Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan are our last defense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tibby. And this is such a deeply personal choice. I am a mom, and I talk about it all the time because she is my everything. But when I was pregnant, and I had a high-risk pregnancy, that was the moment where I knew that being pro-choice and making sure that women, that pregnant people were making these decisions, these informed decisions with their doctors, was something that I was a steadfast supporter of. So I'm so grateful to you, I am grateful to you, and especially to you, for being willing to stand with us in this moment and be crystal clear about your commitment to choice. And with that, we can take any questions.
I have one question on judicial appointments. The judges are appointed by the governor. There is a mandatory retirement age in Minnesota. If Scott Jensen is governor and there's a Republican legislature, they could lower the mandatory retirement age to 40, and they could replace the entire Supreme Court and the entire appellate bench through one term. So will you promise to veto any bill that either lowers the mandatory retirement age for judges or expands the size of the Supreme Court?
Yes. Also, without even having to go through all of that, there will be 3 judges that will reach that during the next term, which will shift the balance of the Minnesota Supreme Court during the next governor's term. So, yes, clearly. I want to thank specifically Tippy. Thank you for sharing and trusting us with the story. And I hope, thankfully, what we wanted to do is reset this from some of the hypotheticals and the absurdities that get into this debate and bring it back to what it's really about. Women making the most personal decision and families making the most personal decisions in their lives. And it's complex, it's hard, it's not easy for anyone. And the peripheral damage of a ban, and this very personal thing as a father. Gwen and I worked for 7 years, and through fertility treatments that would no longer be available because of these bans, we wouldn't have our two beautiful children. So this absurdity that we're not trying to make this the case so that you have the choice to have this beautiful baby that's coming in September.
Governor, you said that you're concerned that if there's a Governor Jensen and, let's say, a Republican legislature, they could seek a constitutional amendment vote.
Yeah.
But if, as you say, 80% of Minnesotans are opposed to this, shouldn't you welcome a vote on that to
Yeah,
maybe put this matter to rest?
Yeah, I just think it's in this office, if you see if the ethics of trying to stay above this, trying to stay, allow the courts to do their work, which we've seen that there's no desire from our opponents to allow the Secretary of State's office or the election system. What I worry about is the thumb on the scale on a constitutional amendment that a governor's office could do if they don't take an ethical approach to some of these things. But I don't fear Minnesotans voting on this, just like we did not fear them voting on marriage equality, and we didn't fear them voting on voter ID because Minnesotans understand that. I just think in this climate, it's important for everyone to know what the risks are.
Do you believe that Scott Jensen's position on abortion is as extreme as any Republican
Yes.
in the country?
Clearly, and we've seen that. And the good news is for all of you, he was asked point blank by Mike Mulcahy what he will do, and I said, I will ban abortion. No exceptions for rape and incest. So there's at least the one thing on this is, there's clarity, and this is the most extreme position. We're seeing this across the country and I wanted to make clear with our executive order, protecting women, protecting providers, who we have to have them know that they need to do their job. You don't need a governor dictating medical practices to providers and especially to women.
How does this issue change the dynamics of the race for you and for other Democratic candidates? Does it help fire up your base? Does it help with swing voters?
Yeah, I think it's that idea that elections truly matter. I've never seen anything like this, and I've been in it. I saw today someone saying there was already a 10-point swing in the generic ballot. We're working on so many fronts. You saw today we couldn't get any help from the legislature on public safety, so we moved federal funds to deal with public safety. We're seeing this idea that the winds are in our favor and we'll just obstruct everything or whatever. This decision changes everything, and it's not been the first. I mean, imagine the absurdity of states being denied by this very court the week before the right to stop school shootings and firearm deaths, and then turning around and telling states that they had the right to tell Tippy what she should do and her family should do. So yes, it changed the dynamics of this. We've, quite honestly, I have never witnessed the type of engagement. I'm not a super big tweeter or whatever, but Lieutenant Governor and I sat down and tweeted 2 sentences that had 500,000 likes within that. We've had 21 million interactions with our office in the last 96 hours. So I just to reassure Minnesotans out there, I don't know if I want to call it a sleeping giant, but I think the conscience and the decency of Minnesota is rising up in a way that says no. And again, what we're here to, this isn't a nuanced position between myself and my opponent. This is as far as the Grand Canyon could be in how we view women and how we view healthcare.
Governor, you're kind of suggesting that, say there's a Governor Jensen that, and a Republican-controlled legislature, they pass a restriction or a ban that's all it takes. But with Gomez, it would seem that it would take it would immediately be challenged under that precedent, and that it would take several years. So with that in mind, that it might not be an immediate flip, how do you keep the conscience of voters on this if it's kind of a long-term thing? I mean, it took several years to overturn Roe, which was the conservative crusade.
First, I'd say you're very trusting to think that they're not going to find a way to do this, not to find a way around it, not to challenge it, not to take it to courts. Have you seen what the 8th Circuit does on anything that gets challenged? You see what the Supreme Court does? I think it's a very naive position to believe that that is all that's going to protect us from it. I think the executive branch in Minnesota holds the ability to be able to do that, and as I will restate again, there will be 3 Supreme Court justices hit that mandatory retirement age without changing it during the next term.
And I would just say,
We do not have a pro-choice majority in the Senate or in the House. There is a DFL majority, but it is not a pro-choice majority. So if there were these bills, this legislation that comes through, that certainly Governor Walz would veto, there is still a risk. And frankly, our rights being taken away immediately, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, that is the plan, and we can stop it right now. We can stop it right now.
Can I just,
Sure.
I had my abortion it was in 2016, so I experienced the protections of Gomez and protections of Roe v. Wade, and it was still really hard to get one. And I was still denied by the hospital that has birthed my other 2 children, or helped me birth my other 2 children, because I wasn't sick enough, and I wasn't close enough to that. So even under all of these protections, there are ways that people have fought back, or that the other side, for lack of a better term, but has whittled away at different things to make abortion access hard. And for me, there was just one place to go in the entire state.
Governor,
Yes.
Scott Jensen has characterized your position as supporting up to the moment of birth abortions. Can you just comment on that? What do you believe in that?
No.
What's
First of
your
all,
stance on that?
No, I respect where law is written now, but let me ask you this. That sound believable? How many have there been in Minnesota? Does anybody want to give the numbers on that? Of course it doesn't happen. But once again, each of these pregnancies is different, and you know what is believable? People get raped. You know what is believable? Incest happens. You know what is believable? Pregnancies that go dangerous. So, no, of course not. I have been in this office. I've done 1,000 of these as a member of Congress and as governor. Not one time have I ever said that. So again, coming from someone who lied about the election, lied about COVID, is unvaccinated, hell, lied about a cabin I supposedly have. There is no to the truth. But in this one, putting it into this debate is so disrespectful for providers, to women, to what the debate is about, but I expect nothing different. So no, the answer is very clear, no. I respect law as it's written now and as medical providers have defined. There has not, again, a single word of me ever saying so, and I would ask all of you to find the research of how many of those there are, as opposed to 13-year-olds being raped and has to carry a pregnancy. That's the question here, but I'm not surprised by that response.
And we've got time for one more
Can I just
question.
build on that really quick? Are there any changes you would like to make to state law to either expand or
Well, I
just
think
change any of
listening
the
to
current
you
restrictions?
folks of making sure that we're doing this, I think you're hearing this, that we have to trust providers. Listening to a doctor and a patient being told that you will have to get closer to death or sicker before we do something that both of us know will eventually have to happen and be done, those are discussions that should be happening. Listen to women, listen to providers, and then I think we have to make sure that Minnesota is not at the whims of a judge hitting 60 years old, is not at the whims of an extreme legislature or extreme governor. So I can tell you this, that to Minnesotans, as long as Peggy Flanagan and I and our partners are here, not on our watch will this happen. We value and protect women. We will make sure that these extreme positions of Scott Jensen, of no exceptions, rape, incest, don't listen to women, and falsehoods about this are not the law of the land in Minnesota. So,
Perfect.
Governor, are you able to take your candidate hat off and put your governor hat on for a second and explain the funding decision that you released this morning?
sure. Can we? These guys can. If you guys
They can go.
Yeah, sure. We can take a couple.
You can take your sign down too if you
Governor and
want.
LG have a heart out, but
I can do this one. Yeah. The COVID dollars that were left over on this that came back, we have the process that we go through, the legislature validates them. Some of those came back just because of where it was testing wasn't as much, or certain areas. And we put that money into programs specifically focused around gun violence prevention, some of the things around public safety. We did some good work, I believe, around housing and housing the unsheltered, and used some of that federal money, things that I wish the legislature would have been able to do and didn't. And so we've got a gun lock program in there that we think those things help. I think many of us who are firearms owners, it's one of the most effective things you can do, and that's how we made some of those decisions.
So this makes up for some of what the legislature.
Tom, we really
Correct.
gotta get him out, Tom.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, we're
Thank you
just
all.
trying to ask him.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kitty.
Thank you.